all across the fantasy universe. Welcome one and all to fantasypoints.com and the 2 Point Stance. I'm your host, Brian Drake. Follow me on Twitter at Drake Fantasy. Joined as always by my main man, Joe Dolan. You know him, you'll love him over on Twitter at FG_Dolan. Joe, little birdie tells me you're going to see Mr. Bruce Springsteen this weekend.
I am. So yeah, we're getting up tomorrow morning. Sorry, I just knocked my microphone. Good start to the podcast, by the way.
Professionals, folks.
I'm going to see Bruce Springsteen. I'm waking up in the morning, driving to Atlanta. I live in Greenville, South Carolina. It's about 2.5 hours, 3 hours on a bad day. Drive, and we're going to go see Bruce Springsteen. So I'm excited about that.
I'm so jealous.
I mean, I'm sure it's going to be a great show, probably upwards of 3 hours. So Drake, I want to throw a disclaimer out there to people.
Yes, please. We need this.
A couple of weeks ago, a lot of people noticed that our iTunes feed stopped updating. Well, now our Apple Podcast feed stopped updating. I am reached out to Apple to help with this, but I have had multiple people have an issue with apparently it's a new podcast feed with a new ID. I posted this in our subscriber Discord, and Drake, we should put a link to the podcast, in our show notes as well. Apparently it's a new feed. Well, I've had some people also have issues if they were subscribed to the old feed being unable to subscribe to the new feed. And so what I was able to do on my phone and my wife's phone was go to the new feed using the new link, play an episode, unsubscribe from the old one, and then you're able to add the new episode to your library. I don't understand why this is happening. I'm helping multiple subscribers get through this. I've reached out to Apple for help, but this sucks for you and me because we're putting on these great shows, and people are having trouble listening to it. I'm going to think we're going to just keep pounding that home. Hopefully Apple gets out to me and gives us a fix on this quickly, but that is a way to get around it. What you do is unsubscribe to the old feed, search for the Fantasy Points podcast on the podcast app. It'll bring up, I guess, our new feed, play an episode from that, and then like midway through, like 2 minutes in, just click subscribe. You should be able to subscribe to the episode. It's a way around it. It sucks, but I can't believe this has happened. We use Anchor at .fm. Which is a great website, but it's owned by Spotify, so maybe there's some chicanery going on. I probably shouldn't say that on the podcast. I'm joking, by the way. But
you want to get around all that, folks? Go over to YouTube, search Fantasy Points, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and you can watch all our great shows. You can watch all the stuff that Joe put out in the morning throughout the season. We've got great off-season content, but you definitely want to make sure that you're in the YouTube. You've got the Apple iTunes thing set up, because also we got guys down at the Senior Bowl. Our Take Talk podcast is broadcasting from there, giving you updated information on all these soon-to-be rookies, so you're not going to want to miss all that stuff going on. But, Joe, the reason that we're here is not only to plug the 30% off early bird special that ends Super Bowl Sunday, but you're going to go see what many consider to be one of the greatest musicians of all time, Bruce Springsteen. Yes. We have this week the GOAT to many, Tom Brady, retiring from the NFL. He did it his way.
What a transition there, Drake. Wow.
Yeah, that's why, that's why they backed up the Brinks truck to get me over here to fantasypoints.com. So Tom Brady goes out. He retires. Tom Brady, after 23 seasons in the NFL, finished with, let me hit you with some of these numbers, folks. 7-time Super Bowl champion, 5-time Super Bowl MVP, 3-time NFL MVP, 15-time Pro Bowler. I want to see Tom Brady out there doing the long drive contest and playing dodgeball, by the way. 3-time first-team All-Pro, 2-time Offensive Player of the Year. Plus, he holds so many records, including games started, wins by a quarterback, most passing yards, completions, touchdowns, 1 million Super Bowl records, including number of touchdown passes, completions, game-winning drives. You know the story. Tom Brady's the man. So what we're going to do here is not just wax poetic about Tom Brady, but there's a lot of tentacles to this, Joe. A lot of ripple effect, because now the Tampa Bay Buccaneers need a quarterback. We know that he was rumored to be going to Las Vegas. Oh, by the way, they've jettisoned Derek Carr. They're going to need a quarterback. And we've got to see where Aaron Rodgers fits in all this. You had an interesting trade scenario on Twitter today. So, let's unpack this Tom Brady thing. First and foremost, were you surprised when Tom announced his retirement? Because we all thought he was going to stick around and go to the Raiders.
I was a little surprised because I thought he was going to play this year. I thought he wanted to try to get another great year out. But maybe he also sat here and was like, I just don't want to have another terrible year. Obviously, he's gone through a lot of personal turmoil. He probably had his worst season, since he got hurt, really. Maybe that last season in New England wasn't all that hot either. But maybe he just decided he's been under enough stress this year and he decided to hang it up. Like, I mean, you can't deny he had a phenomenal career, and I'm not going to question his motivations or lack thereof. I mean, the guy had just an outrageous career. I was a little bit surprised, but when a 46-year-old quarterback retires, Drake, I don't think you can consider it a surprise. This isn't like Barry Sanders.
Yeah, and Brady ended his age 45 season with 4,694 yards, only 25 touchdown passes. That's the fewest he's thrown since 2019 when he threw 24. But I thought he could still play. He just didn't want to get hit. And that was very apparent in a lot of games out there. And maybe going to a Las Vegas, he figured, you know what? Their defense stinks. The line's not great. I'm going to get murdered out here, even though it's cool as I play for the Raiders. But maybe there just wasn't a good option. There wasn't a good fallback plan for him for anywhere else to go.
No, I just don't think there was. I mean, the Raiders is where I thought he was going to go. He would have found work somewhere. But yeah, look, the guy was the best ever. I'm not going to sit here. There's so many Boston writers and even Tampa writers who have done so much better putting it into words how great he was. And we'll put our own little spin on that at the end of the podcast. I have a fun little exercise for us to do about that. But I think Tom Brady just decided right now, you know what? In 2014, I said, I'll retire when I suck. And I think Tom Brady maybe deep down expected himself to suck earlier than 2022. And this year, maybe he started feeling it slip a little bit. And he decided, that's enough. I'm done. Let's get my life together. Let's go broadcast. I don't think, by the way, we have not seen the last of Tom Brady. I think broadcasting, maybe doing something similar to what the Mannings do if he's not a traditional broadcaster, is in the cards. But it's time for him to just hang it up. He's done everything there is to do. And the only thing that was keeping him going was an addiction to football. Probably harder to break than in general, but than anything else. But maybe this year he took a couple too many hits and was like, it's time.
I don't really want to see Tom Brady as Tony Romo, who's got his own problems now. We can talk about that at some point. I don't want to see him become John Madden or one of these other guys. Like, that just doesn't. Yeah. Michael Jordan didn't step away and then, sit next to Marv Albert. Like, that's not what Tom Brady should be doing in my mind. I don't think he'd be good at it either.
No, maybe he will be. I don't know. It's possible that Tom Brady is a savant and he fills the void that I guess Tony Romo did for like 2 years and now doesn't anymore. And maybe he's just milquetoast, but he certainly will bring some star power to a broadcast. I'm having a hard time putting into words the NFL without Tom Brady. And yeah. I think deep down, there's this weird thing. Brady's obviously got a lot of haters. Mm-hmm. I mean, when you kick everybody's ass for 25 years, that's going to happen. I never was one of them, and I'm not trying to elevate myself above, people who can't stand Tom Brady. Like, dude,
it's our show. We can elevate yourself, please.
Yeah, I hate the New York Mets. I hate them. I don't want to see them have success. I hate the Boston Celtics. I hate the Pittsburgh Penguins. I should probably not say this because it's a football podcast, but screw it. I hate the Dallas Cowboys. Now, I try to be objective in my fantasy football analysis, and I think I do a good job of that. CeeDee Lamb was one of my most drafted players all year. But I never had that for Tom Brady, and it's probably because my team didn't have problems getting out of the AFC. They had their own problems defeating Jake Delhomme and Brad Johnson in back-to-back years getting out of the NFC. I wasn't a Jets fan, I wasn't a Bills fan whose team went 33-3 against Brady, or 3-33 against Brady. But there's just a level of respect I have for Brady. I don't ever think he was the most exciting player to watch. I guess there is a subsect of people on YouTube who love watching surgery. Find it fascinating, find it very technical, find it so incredible. I guess watching Brady was like watching surgery. And when the Patriots were ripping up the league in 2007 with Randy Moss teams, I guess watching Brady was like watching an unbelievably gross but fascinating surgery. Like, whoa, you have got to see this. But you know, I don't think many people turn on as many highlight reels as they do for Mahomes or they do for Michael Vick or they do for Josh Allen. But that's just greatness, man. Tom Brady was great. He was, from a fantasy perspective, incredible. And I think from an NFL perspective, we'll get to more of the fantasy perspective later, but from an NFL perspective, to move the conversation forward, this leaves a void in this offseason. You and I talked just last week about the quarterback movement. We both thought Brady was going to the Raiders. So this leaves a void where maybe it was the Raiders, maybe it was the Dolphins, maybe it was the 49ers, where a team who thought there was going to be an opportunity to have Tom Brady as their starting quarterback isn't going to have that opportunity this year. And that creates a domino effect. Starting, of course, Drake, with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I don't know if this has been updated yet on Spot Rack, but they have a lot of work to do. The Tampa Bay is 31st in the league in available cap space for 2023 at negative 55 million. Now, doing my crude research here, Brady retiring helps them, but he's still a cap hit of somewhere between 13 and 18 million. So it's going to help him a little bit, but they've got to find somebody out there. They've got the 19th overall pick. That's not going to land you an elite starting quarterback, not in this draft by any means. So what do we think happens with this team? They're going to be in that, I think, Derek Carr type market now. Maybe a Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is going to get paid, folks. Like, all these dominoes keep falling and Daniel Jones is a free agent. Let me throw another name at you. I think this is perfect. What about Jimmy Garoppolo? Jimmy Garoppolo, followed him in New England, went out and made his mark out in San Francisco. You can probably get Jimmy G, I guess, sort of cheaper than market value coming off the injury and all that. I think Jimmy G would slide in there, and this is still a playoff quality team.
Yeah, so here's the issue, and look, everybody's like, the salary cap's fake. Yes and no. Even teams who are $1 billion over the cap, $1 million over the cap, that's not so bad. Even teams who are $1 billion over the cap find a way to get under it. But part of the complicating issue here is the Buccaneers are $55 million over the cap as of right now. That's the second highest over the cap total in the league, behind the Saints, who are perpetually last in the league in cap space. Is there a point here, and I'm talking about, if we're looking at the dynasty value of somebody like Chris Godwin, the dynasty value of someone like Rachaad White, the dynasty value of someone like Cade Otton, who came on there this year, is there a chance that the Buccaneers blow this up and try to say, we knew what we were getting into when we signed Tom Brady? We got everything we possibly could. And don't tell me there isn't a Buccaneers fan out there who wouldn't have signed up for 3 playoff appearances and a Super Bowl victory with Tom Brady in 3 years, okay? Absolutely. Not a single one of them would not sign up for that. Is there a chance that they're like, you know what, Mike Evans, we're trading him. Leonard Fournette, we're trading him. Young players on defense or veteran players on defense, we're trading them. And we're going to try to say, we brought Brady in here knowing it wasn't a long-term solution to get our team a championship. We accomplished that. Now it's time to pay that check. And do you trade Mike Evans now? You and I already detailed multiple teams who need that receiver. The Dallas Cowboys need a second receiver. The Buffalo Bills need a second receiver. The Kansas City Chiefs need a first receiver. So there are so many teams who would be interested in a Mike Evans. And Mike Evans coming off what is his 10th consecutive 1,000-yard season to open his career. How many more opportunities are you going to have to get a high draft pick for a Mike Evans? So that's the other complicating factor I have here. Or do the Buccaneers just think, Evans, we still think's on the back end of his prime. Godwin's in the thick of his prime. We've got this good young back. We had some bad luck with the offensive line, but we think that's going to be pretty good. And we think Jimmy Garoppolo can come in here and win a weak division. I'm not really sure where I stand on that, but when you look at this roster compared, if they have better injury luck this year, especially on the offensive line, they probably are the best team in that division still, depending on who the quarterback is. So there's a whole lot of ways this can go with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I'm not really sure which way I lean on that right now.
Yeah, you made a lot of good points there. And as I scroll through the list of potential free agent quarterbacks out there and people who could realistically come in and start for you, it's not going to be Baker Mayfield. It's not going to be Sam Darnold. It comes down to Garoppolo. They're not going to have the money to want to pay Daniel Jones. Geno Smith will stay where he is. And then you're looking at, it gets dark quick, as they like to say. I mean, you're not going to get Lamar. I mean, after that, there's nothing. It's really, they're in a tough spot of, they kind of have to get Jimmy Garoppolo at this point.
And you're picking in the middle of the first round, so it's not going to be that pretty. So yeah, I mean, Buccaneers. I think if I were them, I'd probably trade Mike Evans, but I don't know if they're going to look at that division and say that's the right thing for them to do, and it's fascinating.
They probably wish they would have known this earlier, so then they could have been in a new market for a head coach. So then you could get a new head coach, new quarterback, maybe. Imagine this. You've already got, if you are the Buccaneers, you've got your pick 19th overall. Then you make a trade. You trade away Mike Evans, maybe another piece on defense. Who knows? Maybe Kansas City gives you the 31st overall pick. Now you got 2 first-round picks. Now you got a little ammo to move up to go get your quarterback of the future. So we'll see what happens with Tampa Bay. Real interesting.
Do you do both? Do you trade Mike Evans, still keep Chris Godwin, and kind of retool and say, all right, we're going to sign Jimmy Garoppolo, and then we're going to use those 2 first-round picks to help build this roster? Wonder if they think there can be a half measure here. That's interesting as well.
Yeah. Chris Godwin's a good player. There would be teams lining up to get their hands on Chris Godwin. Imagine Chris Godwin in Kansas City. Oh, my God. That would be fun. You had a really fun tweet, speaking of that, on Twitter today, as, of course, I just click off it. Literally the second I want to go to it.
Do you want me to read it for you?
Be a professional here. I got it right here. And you said, would the Raiders trading the 7th pick in this year's draft plus their 2024 first to the Packers for number 15 this year and Aaron Rodgers get it done? Who says no? So again, the Raiders trading number 7 and their number 1 pick next year for 15 and Aaron Rodgers, because also we saw Davante Adams put out a tweet. I think he since deleted it. Somebody said, where's Aaron Rodgers going to live next year? And he's like, oh, my town. He's going to live where I live. So you think that's a real interesting possibility? Boy, oh boy, the bidding war for Aaron Rodgers between the Jets and now maybe the Raiders. Green Bay is like, oh my God, we got Jordan Love sitting here. We're going to get some first-round picks. This is great.
So my tweet, here's how I know it was a reasonable offer. I had like half Packer fans saying, absolutely, and half Packer fans saying, absolutely not. And so essentially what the deal is, the Packers would move up from 15 to 7 this year and pick up a first-round pick next year for Aaron Rodgers. And when you think of Aaron Rodgers at his peak, and if he was 31 years old and had another decade of quarterbacking left, that is obviously an absurd trade offer. But when you consider we've had talk about his retirement for now like 2 years in a row, including this offseason, and we've had talk that Aaron Rodgers could be year to year at this point. The contract is so heavy. It's a tough contract to take on. I think it's a pretty reasonable offer. And what I do know is there are Jet fans who maybe considered Aaron Rodgers a fait accompli, who now are like, ugh, the Raiders have Davante Adams. They have all the incentive to try to improve. We already know they're not bringing Derek Carr back. So that's the other piece of this onion, right? You go to Derek Carr, and let's presume Lamar Jackson and Daniel Jones get franchise tagged, okay? Which I think is the most likely outcome, at least for Lamar. But let's presume that. Aaron Rodgers and Derek Carr, probably the 2 best quarterbacks available on the open market. And with Geno, Jimmy G. Those 2, we know Carr's not going back to the Raiders. So the Raiders aren't going to be in the mix for Derek Carr for obvious reasons. There is no way the Raiders decided we're going to move on from Derek Carr and we're going to go sign Jimmy Garoppolo. There's no way they would do that. It would be stupid.
Yeah.
There's no way they're saying we're going to move on from Derek Carr. We've had enough of him, and his Kirk Cousins tendencies, and then go sign Geno Smith. They're not going to do that.
And from this year, Aaron Rodgers saw what life is like without Devontae Adams, without having that alpha. He knows he has very, very few years left. Does he want to go to New York and play with a very young but talented wide receiver group? Or do you want to go finish things out in the desert in great conditions, playing in that dome with Devontae Adams, with what's left of Darren Waller, and with Hunter Renfrow in the slot? And, they'll find a running back. Maybe it's Josh Jacobs, maybe it's not. But to me, if I'm an old guy versus playing in New York, and then you got to deal with the media out there, nobody in Vegas cares. There's not going to be a microscope on you from that local media like it's going to be in New York City. Why would Rodgers want to go put himself through that?
Yeah. So I think that just becomes fascinating because here's what the Raiders are going to do. They're either going to go big fish frying, meaning they're going to get Lamar Jackson or Aaron Rodgers, or they're going to draft a quarterback because they pick 7th and they don't have far to go if they want to move up. So that is the way I look at it. You can sell Jet fans, even if they've talked themselves into Rodgers. You can sell Jet fans on Derek Carr. You can sell Jet fans on Jimmy Garoppolo because you're going to be able to say, well, Zach Wilson was so freaking bad that anybody's going to be better. I don't think you can sell a Raider fan on Jimmy Garoppolo. After you're like, why are we getting rid of Derek Carr if we're going to go get Jimmy Garoppolo? Like, well, what's the point of that? So that's why I think the Raiders are a real threat to go get Aaron Rodgers right now. On top of the obvious fact that they have Devontae Adams already.
Yeah, that's like, hey, I've got a Toyota, and you trade it in for a Honda. It's like it's the same car. What are we doing here?
Yeah, there might be features that are nicer. Maybe the warranty's better on one of them. I drive a Hyundai Sonata. I love my Sonata, but it's the same thing. It's like, this one's got the better warranty. And there's a couple more features for cheaper on this one, but this one's more durable. But they're the same car. You're 100% right. Yeah, 100% right.
What do you think the odds are that Lamar Jackson gets? It finds his way somewhere else. Maybe a sign and trade. A lot of people like Atlanta in that mix. But what are the odds you think that Lamar Jackson doesn't play another down for the Baltimore Ravens?
I think those odds that he doesn't play another down for them are lower than I thought they were 3 weeks ago.
Interesting. How come?
Because what else are they going to do? They fired the offensive coordinator. And I think maybe you can convince Lamar that was an issue. This offense is going to look better. We're going to support you. I thought it was like 50-50 before. Now I think it's like 80-20 that he's back with the Ravens. I just don't know what else they're going to do.
Yeah, the Ravens pick 22nd overall. I doubt they use that pick on a wide receiver, but God, do they need help. And they're not going to find it in free agency this year, as we've talked about on some of the prior 2 Point Stance podcasts. I mean, you're looking at like Jacoby Myers as the best wide receiver available right now. So that's brutal. What would you do if you're that Baltimore team and you've got Lamar? He's going to come back. You're going to pay him. How do you jazz up this offense? I don't think Lamar wants to run around necessarily as much as he has been. Maybe he didn't like that. Maybe it's a la like Donovan McNabb when he was young. He's like, I don't want to run all the time. Or Randall Cunningham, I'm going to throw the football.
More receivers. It's been obvious for years. They came into this year with Rashad Bateman. We all like Bateman, and we didn't predict he was going to get hurt early in the season. But they haven't had receivers on that team, and we knew they didn't have receivers on that team. We knew they didn't have them this offseason, and they didn't do anything to improve that position at all. They're one of those teams that, and every year, and it's going to happen again in April. Oh my God, the Ravens are winning the draft. I can't believe they get all these players. And then they but I don't know, maybe they're so focused on winning the damn draft and drafting off everybody's big board that they forget that there's players they need on this team. They need to help Lamar Jackson. And I think the big thing they can do is, Lamar, if we can't work out a long-term contract, we're going to franchise you. We're going to work on that long-term contract, but we are going to make a commitment to helping you. We're going to draft receivers. We're going to sign a veteran to go alongside Rashad Bateman. Unfortunately, it's a bad year for that, as we've discussed. and then we're gonna try to make sure that you're in a position to put points on the board and everything isn't on your shoulders. I think that's the most likely outcome. I don't think Eric DeCosta is stupid by any stretch of the imagination. I just think that he's had some very frustrating years building up the supporting cast around Lamar Jackson.
We just talked about the guy. You know who looked great in that uniform, catching bombs from Lamar? Mike Evans.
There you go. That's a really good point. That would be
Wow.
a huge splash. That would be a huge splash for them, and probably one that's needed. I mean, I have to imagine the Buccaneers are already getting calls.
Oh, yeah. You and I talked a little bit last night when we were kind of planning out the show. We were talking about, our love of Brady. And I feel the same way. You mentioned a little earlier how I love Brady's work ethic. I love that he's a winner. I love that, like, when I go out and play bar league softball and golf and I'm wearing the war paint and, it's my sole purpose in life was to win bar league softball championships. And by God, I did so. And that's why I look at Tom Brady and I'm like, I love this guy. I want to be like that. I love a guy who can just outwork everybody in the room. And then we started talking about guys we don't like. Like, who is the new Brady that everyone is going to start to hate because they win. For me, I'm already at Joe Burrow. I don't like the watch him throw the ball and spin around and the cigar in the locker room and all. Like, all right, like Brady could do it because he won. Like, go win something first, Joe Burrow. I'm already kind of sick of everyone is anointing him. He's the next Brady. He's the greatest thing in the world. Like, all right, he's great. He's got an incredible supporting cast, but I think he's just been anointed as the guy a little too soon. And I know you've got a different player in mind.
Yeah, so I think Burrow's that because he's got that cool personality. The thing about here's the thing. First and foremost, I don't dislike this player. I don't dislike the person at all. The Patrick Mahomes thing is like, it's annoying for multiple levels. Number one, it's annoying because we have to keep figuring out, who's the next rival? Like it's like when Tiger Woods was at his dominance. Everybody was like, oh, look at this young guy, Sergio Garcia coming, and he's the next Tiger. And like,
meanwhile, he's beating up Davis Love the third and VJ Singh.
Yeah, now he's on the Live Tour. And then, then Phil Mickelson, who actually was kind of a rival, but couldn't touch Tiger, in terms of just sheer impact on the game. Yeah, VJ Singh was the Tiger's big rival for a little bit there. Remember in the late 90s, VJ Singh. And that's why it's kind of Mahomes. But also, like, there was a tweet I saw from some guy who used to like write about baseball and he covers the Royals or something. And he's like, and he was like, oh, Patrick Mahomes led the Chiefs from, down for a game-winning drive on a bum ankle. Put some respect on his name. Who are you talking to? Who is not putting respect on Patrick Mahomes' name? So it's not so much Mahomes, it's the people who talk about him that are like, have you ever seen the tweet? It's actually from a friend of mine. Like the tweet it's from my friend Kill a Cow on Twitter. And there's always somebody on Twitter arguing with absolutely no one. Quote, but I was told Steph Curry can't shoot. Like there always has to be like somebody who makes the most absurd point just to try to win an argument. That's where it's getting with Mahomes. Put some respect on his name. Okay, who doesn't respect Patrick Mahomes? So yeah, there's my little rant there. But it's mostly about how people talk about him as opposed to the player himself.
I'm with it. You did some excellent sleuth work here, digging up Tom Brady's 5 best fantasy games ever, including the playoffs. And this, of course, is sorted by DraftKings points,
which is kind of PPR with bonus. So I thought that was like kind of the best way to do it. And by the way, this is a fantasy football podcast. So I thought, let's talk about the greatest super flex dynasty asset of all time. I don't know if anybody can prove they picked up Tom Brady off the scrap heap in 2001 and then never dropped him. I'm sure it happened somewhere.
I can do you one better. Okay. Coming into this season, right? Tom Brady, the retirement news comes out. And I've got a team that's like Brady, Jalen Hurts. I think I have Garoppolo on that team. So whatever. So Brady retires, right? I drop him. It's like, okay, well, the guy retired. What am I going to do? So Brady retires, and I have like I traded up. I had the number 2 pick in the rookie draft, and you can draft rookies, you can draft players in the league, whatever. So Tom Brady, then he comes back. So I go to the league commissioner. I'm like, I know the answer to this already, but there's no way I can just get Brady back, right? Because the fake retirement. He's like, nope, you dropped him. It is what it is. Like, okay, it is what it is. The guy who had the number 1 overall pick, literally his quarterback was like Ryan Fitzpatrick. He had nothing at quarterback. He drafted Tom Brady number 1 overall, and Breece Hall fell to me at number 2. Oh, what a day. So in essence, I traded
he had to
Tom
know
Brady
that
for
could
Breece
help,
Hall.
right? Like he had to know that could happen, right? I mean, come on.
Love it. So now I've got Breece Hall with McCaffrey and Joe Mixon. I'm sure we'll get into more on Joe Mixon later, but thank you. What a move. But Tom Brady's number 5 performance. This actually happened this year, Joe. Week 17 of 2022.
So in essence, Drake, this was the final fantasy game of Tom Brady's career. It was championship week this season, and he turned in a top 5 fantasy performance.
40 DraftKings points. He went 34 of 45 for 432 and 3. And he ran a touchdown in, a little Brady sneak, coming back from down 14 points. Of course, Mike Evans just blew the world away, catching 3 of those scores. So just a monster day for Tom Brady.
Also the best game of Mike Evans' career, by the way, from fantasy perspective.
And in that time, that Mike Evans, Mike Evans scores like 50 points, right? Yeah. So this was, again, the DeMar Hamlin week where people are saying, well, hey, I don't know. I'm up 30 points and you got to give me a championship. No one's going to score 30, 40 points. No, you could have Mike Evans who just scored 50 points. Like, it can happen, folks. Not all the time, but it can happen.
They beat the Panthers, by the way, I believe, in that game.
Yeah, with Sammy Darnold.
Sam Darnold actually played well, yeah.
Yep.
So Tom Brady sends us off, us fantasy players, with one of the guy's played about 1 million games. His final fantasy game in the midst of maybe the worst season he's had in the last decade. He sends us off with an all-time great game.
I'm going to put these notes in our show notes, what you wrote up for all these games, because you also put YouTube clips for it too. So folks can go and check out some of the highlights. Excellent work by you here on this. His 4th best performance, week 5 of 2021. It was a 45-17 victory over the Miami Dolphins. Tua gets hurt, and Brissett has to start the game. Brady goes off for 411 and 5 touchdowns. He had Antonio Brown at that point. I think people kind of forget that little, Brady's kind of gone in and out with some of these elite wide receivers, but man, that was a good team when you got Antonio Brown and Mike Evans. Whew, man, like, how in were you on Antonio Brown when he was right for that brief period of time?
When he was with the Bucs,
yeah,
very tentatively in on Antonio Brown. Scott Barrett's all-time favorite draft asset was drafting Antonio Brown in the last round when he was with the Bucs. Mm-hmm. And I guess if you drafted him in the last round or around there, it worked out for you, right? I mean, he had some good years, but it kind of ended more spectacularly than most of us thought. But probably ended similarly from a statistical standpoint and an availability standpoint. But man, those two could work some magic together, and I think losing AB, I thought was a huge factor in Brady's maybe the early playoff loss last year, and maybe the decline this year, just not having that guy who they clearly had great chemistry with.
Absolutely. His 3rd best performance, again against those Miami Dolphins, week 7 of 2007, a 49-28 victory for the Patriots. Look at these names that he hit for touchdowns. He had 6 on the day, mind you. Wes Welker, 9 for 138 and 2. Randy Moss, remember him? He caught a pair. And Dante Stallworth even got into the act. So did Kyle Brady, a Brady to Brady connection, as you note. Man, man, that year with Randy Moss, though, was something special.
Yeah. Who started that game for the opposing team? This was against Miami, too, as well, right?
Yeah. This is, and you put in the notes, the quote, legendary Cleo Lemon
was the opposing quarterback. So Miami was on the receiving end of 2 of Tom Brady's 5 greatest fantasy games, including playoffs, by the way. And there was one playoff game on the list, and I believe it is next.
It is his 2nd best performance, the 2011 divisional round, a 45-10 trouncing of the Denver Broncos. Brady throws for 363 and 6 again. Holy smokes. Gronk, look at these numbers. You tell me he wasn't missed. 10 for 145 and 3. Deion Branch went 3 for 85 and a touchdown. I love you put this in there. He who must not be named, 455 and 1. I'm trying to is that our guy Aaron Hernandez?
It's Aaron Hernandez, yes.
I got you.
That was the game they used him as a running back. Do you remember that?
No,
he
I
came
don't
out and they were
that.
just handing the ball to him. They toyed with the Broncos in this game. They just toyed with them. It was a blowout.
And the quarterback in that game was Tim Tebow for the Broncos. He threw for a whole 136 yards the last game before Peyton Manning would become the Denver signal caller. And number one on the list. Now, mind you, I just watched a game. This has nothing to do with the season, but this game at number one has Randy Moss going for 8, 129 and 3. This is a shellacking week 6 of 2009 Patriots over the Titans 59-0. So Randy Moss goes off. Brady again throws 6 touchdowns. He's got Welker, Kevin Falk, super underrated guy. But I want to talk about the game in the Super Bowl, the 28-3. We all know it against the Atlanta Falcons.
Back up, Drake.
Yes.
Just a little bit, because I want people to check out this game against the Titans. First and foremost, it's in October, in a blizzard. Brady throws 6 touchdowns. The opposing quarterback in this game, Kerry Collins, threw for -7 yards. So, and then I watched a Brady documentary with last night, actually, talking to Charles Woodson about the Tuck Rule game. And Brady said, I loved playing in the snow because you guys are backpedaling and you're slip sliding all over the place. And I know where my receiver's going to be, or at least should be. So he thinks the defense has the disadvantage in the snow. That game proved it. It is the biggest blowout in NFL history in the Super Bowl era. 59-0. That is the largest margin of victory in the Super Bowl era. An absolute put that game on. The Patriots are in the Patriot uniforms. The Titans are wearing Oiler uniforms. That game was the greatest game of Tom Brady's career, and all the circumstances were absolutely wild. The single biggest quarterback fantasy discrepancy of all time. Kerry Collins threw for negative yards in that game.
Brady throws for 380 and 6 touchdowns, 42.2 DraftKings points for Tom.
Yeah,
Terrific.
sorry about that, Drake. I had to wax poetic about that.
I should have banged more onto that game. You had a great note here also that 2 of his best games, because you did a list of, I don't know, maybe his 30 best games. And all of those games, I think maybe there's a list of 25 or so, there were only 2 losses. Tom Brady didn't lose a lot. Both of the losses came to the exact same team. And you and I, we love this answer. Who did he lose both of those big games to?
The Philadelphia Eagles.
That's right. Woo!
The only 2 games in his top 40 by fantasy points scored were losses. So he was 38-2. The one loss we all know about, it was the 41-33 loss in Super Bowl 52, where Brady threw for a Super Bowl record like 552 or something ridiculous like that. He was insane in that game. It just so happened that he was the one who turned the ball over in his own territory on the Brandon Graham strip sack. The other game, Drake, can you recall in your mind the other game where he lost to the Philadelphia Eagles?
I was trying to think about that before the show. When else did he lose to the Eagles? I mean, my God. I mean, the Eagles were bad for a good stretch of when he was in the league. They had the McNabb. I don't know.
It was a bad Eagles team.
Is this like a Kevin Cobb Eagles team?
I'm gonna disagree with you because, quite frankly, as much as they've pissed me off in my life, the Eagles have been pretty freaking good for most of my life. Like
when I was a kid, they were real bad.
Yeah,
the post Randall Cunningham era before Donovan McNabb,
Rodney Peete, Ty Detmer, like that.
Doug Peterson.
Coy Detmer, Doug Peters. Now, Doug was the bridge to McNabb while McNabb learned the offense, which was a completely defensible move by Andy Reid at the time. It was in 2015, Drake. Sam Bradford went on the road into Foxborough and beat Tom Brady. Now, this Eagles team was collapsing, by the way. They were utterly cold. You might remember Malcolm Jenkins had like a pick six or a fumble six in that game. The Eagles were on the verge of a collapse. There was a mutiny brewing against Chip Kelly. And that was the game where like Jeffrey Lurie apparently went into the locker room and gave a pregame speech.
Wow.
Which like apparently like never happens. Like the owner doesn't go in the locker room before the game. And like apparently he sat next to DeMarco Murray on the plane. And like DeMarco Murray was like, we can't stand this guy. And I mean, I don't think many Eagles fans have a lot of love lost for DeMarco Murray, but I think there was Jason Peters by the end of that year was like, there is no way I'm playing hurt for this guy. And like, but that the one like shining moment outside of that preseason game where Sam Bradford looked like the greatest quarterback on planet Earth. You remember that game against
I do. I was so pumped for the season.
But I don't think, Bradford was necessarily to blame for that whole year. It was just a bad, Chip Kelly. He lost the team, but that game was like a shining, like, I cannot believe they just went on the road and beat the Patriots with this team that everybody hates. Like, Eagles fans hated that team. Eagles players hated that team. The Eagles players hated their coach. Like, everybody hated that team, and they went on the road and beat the Patriots. So there you go. Any given Sunday in the National Football League, Drake.
I was at the link. The Eagles were playing Washington that week, very early in the season, and it was the game where Brady got hurt, where he got rolled up on and he was out for the year. And then we got Jimmy Garoppolo. So in that, no, it wasn't Jimmy Garoppolo. It was Matt Castle, wasn't it? That year.
Well,
but anyways.
that was, so when the Eagles were playing, so you mean when Brady got hurt?
Brady got hurt. I'm in the stadium and word starts to spread that Brady got hurt and he's done. It's a bad injury.
So
they announce it. People go bananas. You would have thought the game it's like the first quarter. People are like, yeah, F you, Brady. They're high five.
So you were in the link?
Yeah.
So that was week 1 of 2008. And the Eagles, I remember this distinctly because that was my year working for the Eagles. They were playing the St. Louis Rams.
No, was it the Rams? I swore it was playing against Washington, but could be different. All I remember is Brady got hurt and people lost their minds, which it could be. I have a good friend of mine who is a Rams fan. And maybe we went together, and that's why we're there. It doesn't matter. That was week 1.
So, but it was, yeah. So there was buzz going around that Brady, because I remember when I saw Brady get hurt, I was in the press box.
Okay. Because
obviously I was at the Eagles game, and the monitors are going around, and the Eagles absolutely ran the Rams out of the stadium that day. Who was the Ram? I think it was still Mark Bulger at that point, actually. The Eagles ran him out of the stadium. And so in the press box, I think we were gathering around like Les Bowen or somebody, and like we were watching the video of Brady get rolled up on, and we knew it wasn't good. Like by the way, one of Belichick's best coaching jobs. That team went 11-5. Did not make the playoffs though at 11-5. But that was Matt Castle, who ended up making a lot of money based on that year with the Patriots. But I mean, here's the other thing for Brady, and probably good for him. While we wrap this up, that was the only year he was really hurt. Yeah, I know he played through some stuff, but I was that the only. That might have been the only time in his entire career he missed games because of injury.
I think so. Yeah, you can't recall Tom missing much time.
Let me see. I'm pretty sure that might be the case. 17. Okay. Oh, there's 12 games. There's 12 games in 2016, but that's because of Deflategate, which, by the way, the biggest bullshit story of all time. Like,
absolutely. That was them out to get Brady and
for the
and Robert Kraft and
stuff and all that. Now it's the only time Brady missed games because of injury, though. You will recall, Drake, in 2001, the year before they went to the year they did go to the Super Bowl, which was Brady's like coming out party. Brady got hurt in the AFC Championship game, and Drew Bledsoe won them the AFC Championship game. And there was talk. Will Belichick start Bledsoe in the Super Bowl? Imagine if he goes the other way on that.
Yeah. What a different story we're talking.
Brady's coming off injury. Bledsoe is your big money quarterback who only lost his job because he got hurt. It actually took some balls for Belichick to make that call. It really did.
The last thing I wanted to point out about Brady is, like I said, I was watching that Super Bowl against Atlanta. It was at Super Bowl 51, and it's 28-3, and it just underscores again because Gronk didn't play in that game. How little Tom Brady has done it with his whole career. He's throwing to Malcolm Mitchell, Danny Amendola, Chris Hogan, and Julian Edelman. Those are the guys he's throwing to. That's a CYO All-Star team out there.
Yeah,
and he did it most of his career.
He's had some great players. Like Gronk might go down as the best tight end of all time, unless the guy playing in the Super Bowl in a week and a half has something to say about that. Randy Moss has a claim to be one of the three best receivers of all time. So it's not like Brady was crying poorhouse the entire time of his career. Obviously, Mike Evans, lock it down, Drake. Mike Evans is a Hall of Famer.
I love Mike Evans.
Mike Evans could not step on the field once again, and he'd still be in the Hall of Fame with that outrageous career he's had so far. So Brady's played with Hall of Famers, but guess what? If you play 23 years in the league, you're going to play with some Hall of Famers. That's just going to be, and if you have the skill that Brady has, you're eventually going to, guys who are Hall of Famers are going to want to play with you. But when I talked to Ross Tucker about this, and I know I don't want any people who hate Tom Brady to be like, oh my God, shut up, guys. We're shutting up soon. Don't get me wrong. Ross Tucker was like, hey, Joe, when did Brady really become Tom Brady, great fantasy quarterback? And I said, it really was 2007, because prior to 2007, his career high in touchdown passes was 28, which is not bad. It's just, he was like, statistically, he was supercharged Joe Flacco. Now, we all knew Brady was great by the time 2007 rolled around, and he had 3 Super Bowls to his name. But that was when he really took the step and became like a big-time fantasy quarterback. And he kind of waxed and waned on that for the second half of his career. I would think, like, for the most part, he was considered in the top 7 or 8 of fantasy starters. After that, sometimes very much at or near the top. But the consistency is what I'll always have. If you had Tom Brady, you could count on 16 games every year. Some years better than others, depending on his weaponry. But man, I just look at it. One injury in his career that cost him any time. I mean, we've got Lamar Jackson missing time every year. Jalen Hurts has missed time with injuries each of the last 2 years. Patrick Mahomes, he's playing hurt. He's missed time with injury. It's just imagining Tom Brady like being like questionable every week. It just doesn't happen. It didn't happen. And maybe there's another reason for him to hang it up, Drake. His last injury was 15 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I'm getting older. I lost some weight this year. I don't want to get hurt. I don't want it to go out like Brett Favre, who was never hurt until he was, or never missed games until he did. And I think I think that maybe is where Tom Brady's at right now. Hey, this is as close to sucking as I'm ever going to get. I'm going to hang it up right now. Credit to you, Tom Brady. Great career. I just can't imagine football without him. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you he's my favorite player of all time, but the resume is undeniable. Mm-hmm. And his day in Canton, it's going to be a pretty special one.
Yeah, no question about it. And I look forward to it. And you and I will get to hang out in Canton, hopefully this year for the Fantasy Football Expo.
Would be fun. Tom Brady. If not, we'll go when Tom Brady's getting inducted.
Absolutely. So, folks, we want to make sure, what we said at the beginning of the show, make sure you're checking your Apple iTunes account. Make sure you're subscribed to the Fantasy Points podcast.
I'm trying to get an answer from Apple. You want to talk about like pulling teeth. Trying to get an answer from Apple. I'm trying to get it fixed, guys, but there is a workaround. Reach out to me and I'll help you out.
Yeah, and of course, go to the YouTube channel. We're going to be beating the drum for YouTube on this show all year long. YouTube.com/fantasypoints. Subscribe right there. It's free, and you get all the amazing content. Go over to fantasypoints.com right now. We've got 30% off of 2023 subscription plans. The early bird special, it ends on Super Bowl Sunday. You're going to sign up. You want the Guru's rankings. You want the dank stats from Scotty Barrett. You want Tom Brady and all his Super Bowl picks. By the way, the grinder is on fire. If you go read his latest article over at fantasypoints.com, he's got a bunch of Super Bowl props. You want Graham Barfield's work. You want all the great workers we have over at fantasypoints.com. Get it for 30% off. Save the money, folks. So, well, we're going to put a bow on this Tom Brady episode. So thank you, pretty man. We loved watching you for all these years.
Well, I thought you were thanking me.
Well, yeah, you too. Go enjoy yourself down there and, hold up a sign, play Thunder Road. Maybe he'll get to that one as a deep cut.
I don't think that's really a deep cut, but I'm hoping he plays it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Thanks folks for hanging with us. For Joe Dolan, I'm Brian Drake. We'll see you next time on the 2 Point Stance.